Oh, good morning, everybody. Let me just turn my camera around. There we go. Right, good to see you all watching this morning. If you are tuning in this morning, please do stick good morning in the comments so that I know that you're there. And yeah, I'm just going to share with you something this morning that's just been on my heart in the last couple of days. And that's that lots of us have been talking, obviously, about what God is doing during this time of lockdown, and just amazed at the return in numbers to church, the amount of people that have been Google searching for prayer and that sort of thing. Just incredible to see what God is doing. Oh, good morning, Melissa. Good morning, Joe. But the thing that we haven't perhaps talked about is the way in which Satan will also be using this time to tempt and to disrupt the church and to cause opposition to the gospel. And I think that we kind of expect that whenever there's a sort of movement of progress in the church, like we've seen in the last few months, weeks, that there will be opposition that comes as well. And I think that's definitely been the case. And so I just want to highlight a few of those things this morning. They might have been things that you have experienced, and then just talk about how it is that you can kind of tackle them, especially in light of Ascension Day, which I believe was actually yesterday. So we're a bit behind the curve on that, but I thought I would mention it. And so the first thing I wanted to say was, Josh picked up already on this week, but it's mental health. It's Mental Health Awareness Week this week. And I think that obviously lockdown has, for people that were already struggling with mental health, it's made it considerably worse. And for people that maybe their mental health wasn't an issue for them, it's become an issue. And I've certainly had hard days in the last few weeks, and maybe you have as well. Please tell us in the comments about some of the ways in which you've perhaps been able to best deal with that, because I think we need to share common practice about what's helped. I've heard a lot of people talk about the Corona coaster, and I think for me that's how it's felt a lot of the time. Some days I'm like, oh, this is great and wonderful, and the sun is shining, we can just kind of make cakes and hang out and do nothing, and life is just wonderful because of lockdown. And then the next day I'm like, this sucks, we can't see our friends and family, we can't do church as normal, thousands of people are dying, and the economy is it's just up and down, isn't it? And maybe that's kind of like how you felt as well, kind of highs and lows. And so I think that's one of the ways in which I think Satan will try to use that to disrupt your Christian walk and to disrupt the church, because as you kind of face your mental health, there might be all kinds of questions that begin to get raised. I think for lots of people, actually, in the midst of their mental health, one of the key things that they feel is guilt and shame. They think, how is it that I can call myself a strong believer in Jesus and trust this hope and trust in this salvation, and yet still feel these feelings of anxiety and depression, and so you can start to become overcome even by guilt and shame at having even felt those things in the first place. And so I just want to say to you this morning, if you have been experiencing those feelings of depression or anxiety, just don't be ashamed and guilty of it. It's not because you have somehow not believed the gospel. There might be an element of that to an extent, because we're all marred by sin. But even if that is the case, don't feel guilt and shame about it, because Jesus Christ has paid the price for you, so that you would have a relationship with the Father that can never ever be broken. And so I just encourage you this morning to walk into that today, in the midst of your however it is that you're feeling, to just know that the gospel doesn't depend upon how we feel. When we're feeling anxious, when we're feeling down, the gospel doesn't become less true. That hope is always there as a solid foundation of our lives. But practical things help as well. Melissa says routine. I've tried to maintain some kind of routine to help, and might talk about that more in a second, actually, because I think that's a massive thing that can make a huge difference. So thank you, Melissa. Please do say hi again. Joe says, I've struggled a long time with anxiety. I found that my struggle, sharing my struggle with friends, knowing that they're praying, helped. And I think that's absolutely right. I think sometimes just in the process of naming this stuff and getting it out into the open takes away from its power. And I think Satan will use the things that are kept in secret against us. But once we bring them into the light and bring them into our relationships, that's when some of their power gets dispelled. Not that it all goes away, of course it doesn't, but it definitely helps. And that really leads me on to the next thing I was going to say that I think Satan is going to be using against us in this time, is that all these feelings of sin and guilt. I think for lots of us, as we've been in lockdown, you know, for some of us, the kids have just driven us crazy. For some of us, we've been driven crazy by other people breaking the lockdown. For some of us, we've broken the lockdown because we've not been able to maintain it. And so I think for lots of us, we've been through this process probably of some of our sin being exposed, and that can be a painful thing. I know certainly, you know, just being at home for me, I've thought, okay, I'm not as patient as I thought I was. I'm not as kind and loving as I hoped that I was. And maybe you've kind of had struggles with those kinds of areas as well. So I just want to remind you, because I think when we start to experience that kind of those convicting feelings of sin in our life, it can be a really healthy thing, because it causes us to come back to the cross, to come back to Jesus, and to lay our sin at his feet and know what it means to be forgiven all over again. And that can be an amazing experience that's really good for us. But actually, for lots of us, Satan will use those feelings against us to make you feel inadequate, and to make you just feel down about life, and to lose your confidence as a Christian. And so I just want to say this morning, just you have to know and have to remember the simple message of the cross, the simple message of salvation, that Jesus Christ walked up the hill to Calvary carrying your impatience, your poor parenting, your lack of ability to maintain the lockdown, your frustrations, your annoyance at those people clapping outside your house every night. He takes all of your sin and all of your burdens and all of your shame up the cross to Calvary, where it dies once and for all. It's finished with, it's done with. Please do not let it have power over your life any longer. Which means that A, don't feel those feelings of guilt and shame. B, don't be overcome by them. You can defeat them because Christ has defeated them already. The power is in your hands. So just go and do it with confidence. But don't feel trapped by sin either. Like Martin Luther, who some of you will know from the Reformation, he famously said that, well, not famously said, in fact, I'm not even sure he did say this, so I shouldn't say that, but apparently once his pastoral advice to somebody who was really struggling with guilt and sin was, why don't you just go out and commit some small sin just to remind Satan that this stuff has no power over you. Now, that is not my pastoral advice to you. Don't go out and commit some small sin, but it just makes me laugh to remember that is the case. You know, you can go out and commit some small sin to laugh in the face. I mean, don't actually laugh in the face of Satan when you sin, to remind him that this stuff has no power over you any longer. Going back to mental health, Joe said also recognising a problem and contacting services available. Minds Matters, really good way to help yourself. Yeah, that's really helpful. If you're just tuning in now, say good morning. Let me know you're here. We're just doing 3 ways in which Satan is coming against us as the church. During lockdown, we've talked a lot about how God has been moving in lockdown. I just wanted to talk about the kind of opposition to that. And my third and final thing is social media, because I think obviously for lots of us, social media has been a real way to be able to connect with other people during this time. And that's been really helpful for us to be able to join together as church family. I know I've loved being on Facebook as we are now with some of you guys, and just the level of connection that we've been able to experience has been brilliant. But also, you have to be aware of the dangers of this platform. I wrote a blog post a little while ago, and I said that doing church on Facebook was a bit like doing church in the temple of Baal, because we're doing church right now in the temple of a foreign god. Like, you have to start to understand that. And if you don't know the way that social media works, then basically one of the ways, or the main way in which, as I understand it, they make money is basically by harvesting your data and then selling it to marketing companies. And you might think, big deal, okay, they might know some information about me. I've got nothing to hide. But the level of information they know about you is crazy. And because they have so much data, they can predict trends about you. They even know what you're feeling before you feel it. Apparently Facebook or Google will know that you are pregnant, if you're a woman obviously, will know that you're pregnant before your own mother does. They can figure stuff out from what you're searching, what you're looking at, and the kinds of stuff you're engaging with online, and predict things about your life. And they then sell that information to marketing companies that then in turn use that information to manipulate you on social media to essentially worship idols, to buy into capitalism, to buy into consumerism, and to just distract you from worshipping the one true God. And so I just want to highlight, this is not a harmless place on social media. It's an incredibly psychologically powerful tool that is designed to manipulate you to worship things other than God. And so as you are spending more time on social media, I want you to know that we are going into this thing and there's a danger that we become overcome by it and we get sucked into it, and instead of us as the church kind of reaching out on and finding people on social media, the opposite thing can happen, and that's as we come on social media, instead of us overcoming social media, it overcomes us. And so just please be aware of that danger and work out how to carefully use social media. Not that I can at all comment because I'm the worst of all people, but work out how to best use it. And really, I mean, the question in my mind is, how do we disrupt this model? How do we walk into this temple of foreign worship and best disrupt it with the gospel to say, hey, look, none of this stuff satisfies that these marketing companies are promising you, but here is something that satisfies. Here is Jesus in the midst of it all. And so there's three things that I think we need to be watching out for that Satan is going to use against us during this time. He's going to use depression, anxiety and mental health. He's going to use sin and guilt as we spend so much time by ourselves, so we can become convicted of those things. And he's going to use social media itself to come against us. So God is working... sorry, the cat is going mental next to me. God is using this time miraculously to do amazing things. I'm not doubting that at all, but Satan will also be there too, trying to tempt you, trying to distract you during this time. And so as we think about Ascension Day, what is he doing? As we think about Ascension Day, which was yesterday, we remember that Jesus Christ is sitting on the throne at the right-hand side of the Father, and that he's ruling and reigning during this time. And so as we come to think about some of these things, we have to remember that Satan has no ultimate power. That yes, he'll tempt us. Yes, he'll try to confuse us. Yes, he'll come against us. But ultimately, he will not overcome. He will not win. He will be defeated because Jesus Christ did not stay in the grave. And now he's sat up there at the right-hand side of the Father, ruling and reigning. So please hold that in mind. And just know that, during this time, one of the things that's happened is that for lots of us, we've been taken away maybe from the spiritual things that sustained us. So those Sunday morning services, they're not the same as they used to be. I mean, it's great to be doing it online, but we miss some of the stuff that we used to have. And maybe you feel like in the midst of this, you're being left on your own a lot more than you would normally to just do your faith and outwork your faith and to be a Christian. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But during this time of lockdown, you learn how to lead yourself, and you don't wait for some incredibly moving preach and worship session at church in order for you to be able to overcome the ways in which Satan is working in your life. Instead, you can, in this moment, realize that because Jesus is on the throne, you don't need someone else to help you to do that. You can pick up your Bible, you can stick on a worship song, you can start praying, and you can tell Satan where he belongs and get out of your life because you have the power and the authority to do it. You don't need someone else to come and do that on your behalf. And we're so passionate. One of the things at church we're talking about a lot is this priesthood of all believers. That, which really came about in the Reformation, this belief that all Christians have the power, all Christians can understand how to read the Bible, all Christians can pray, all Christians can tell Satan to get back into his place, to stop trying to dismantle your faith and your belief and your trust through mental health, through sin and shame, through social media, that he would not hold power over you in those ways any longer. So anyway, guys, I hope that's encouraging for you this morning. That's kind of what I wanted to say. There are 3 things that that Satan is doing to come against you in this time. Don't be overcome by any of them. Now, last thing I do need to say just before I go, and that is that we have our FM annual conference this evening, which is going to be tonight. I think the details are all on the Hope Open group. There's a pin post at the top. If you click on there, there's a link that tells you the time, the place. You can register for the meeting and so on. But just encourage you, please come along to that. It's going to be great to hear a bit about what our denomination is doing, vision setting for this time, and just giving thanks for some of the stuff that's been happening across our churches in the last year. So please be there. Yes. Melissa says, I think in part it's why the volunteers are so keen. Because of the time lag, I have no idea what you're talking about, Melissa, but I'm sure you are right. Certainly volunteers have been really keen during this time, because the onus has been on them. Perhaps that's what you meant. But yeah, please, guys, I mean, this video will be open all day, so please just keep commenting in and chatting in. Maybe if you've just watched this through on the catch up, just let us know in the comments, what's your advice for trying to overcome Satan during this time, in the ways in which he's tempting us and coming against us. How can we stop him in his tracks? So yeah, thanks very much, and I will see you later. Have a great day.